Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone. Thank you for tuning in today.
Let's wait because we don't have anyone joining us.
Okay.
Just waiting for Aileen to tell people. Okay, we have one person. Aileen is sharing the link now.
We're just going to wait a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If you've joined us, we're just waiting a few minutes so that other people can join us. Having some technical difficulties. We're using a different link than we thought, so we're just giving everyone a couple minutes to join us.
Two. Five. I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. This is my first class live from my apartment instead of our beautiful temple, which unfortunately is closed at this time due to the pandemic and the social distancing requirements. So today we are going to start with a few opening prayers. There's a link to the opening prayers in the chat. If you are on tara.org watching this, you can click the KPC YouTube channel link that is right above the video. And if you're watching on YouTube, the chat is just to the right of the video, and there is a link there. And you can copy and paste that link into your browser and pull up the opening prayers. So I'll just give you a minute to do that. Okay, so hopefully everyone has the prayers in front of them now. We're going to chant the first prayer, the 7-line prayer, 3 times, and then the following prayers we'll just chant once each. Organ yugi num jansam pemage sa dombola yatsen chugi ngorubne pemajung ne jesura kordu kandro mangpo kor ketki jesu da druki jinji lop chi shek su so guru pema city home. Organ yugi num jansam bemage sa dombola yatsen chogi ngorukne bemajung ne jesurak kordu kandro mangpo kor ketki jesu dak druki jinji lop chi shek su so guru pema city home. Organ yugi num jansam pemage sa dombola yatsen chogi ngorukne pemajung ne jesurak kordu kandro mangpo kor ketki jesu dak druki jinji lop chi shek su so guru pema city home. Continuing on. Zong dosem garab shiri sing pema kara jibani shunga sozo numna tatang gatsa so kata lama namla so wadem. Ogmen choki inki podrana dusum sange kongi ngawani rongsem choko ngunsum tongsepe sawe lama namla so wadem. Sashi pochu chuching meto cham rirab ningshi ni degen padi sange zingdu mikte powai drokunam dajing la chupashuk tram guru ratna mandala putsa mega samudra saparana samaya Samchen namki sampadang loyi jeja jitawa jechon tumon tekpahi choki kulo kordu so. And then I'm just going to say a prayer to myself real quick. Well, thank you for everyone who has tuned in today. Thank you for bearing with us as we had some technical issues getting live from our iPad. This is the first time we've done this class with this setup, and so thank you for your patience. I'd like to start today's class with a brief breath meditation. I usually do this at the end of class, and today I'd like to do it twice. We're going to open and close with a meditation today. I think we are all in need of a little more meditation in our lives. This practice is extremely healing and extremely relaxing. We are allowing our minds to rest on the rhythm and the feeling of our own breath. And this is truly restful for the mind. Usually when we want to rest, we turn on the TV or we pick up our phones, but all it does is stimulate our minds more and get us more riled up. So this is a very simple practice, but it's incredibly powerful. It's beautiful and it's healing. It creates space in the mind and helps us to balance our emotions. Normally our minds are so busy and so distracted all of the time. And if we want to generate bodhicitta, the awakened mind of wisdom and compassion, we must first calm our minds. We have to calm down that busyness. The Buddha actually said his favorite meditation was just gently watching his breath. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's start by arousing a feeling of great love for all sentient beings. Relax in that state for a moment. Let's think that we are going to settle our minds and let go of our busyness. We're not just going to sit here and daydream. We are meditating to awaken love and compassion. So just sit with that for a moment. And sit comfortably with your back straight. You can sit in lotus posture if you're very flexible, or half lotus posture. If those are uncomfortable, you can just sit cross-legged, crisscross applesauce. And if that's not comfortable, you can also sit in a chair. But it's important to have a straight back. You may need to sit on a cushion to help you get the right posture so you're not sway-backed or hunched over. So make sure you have a straight back. And place your hands in your lap, just gently relaxed. Traditionally, the right hand is held in the left hand slightly below the navel with the thumbs slightly touching. So you can hold your hands like this and put them just below your navel. And you can also just place the palms of your hands on your knees if that's more comfortable. Either way, extend your shoulders so you're not slouching, you're not contracting inwards, your elbows are out. So you can take nice deep breaths. And keep your neck straight, aligned with your spine, and allow your head to tilt forward in just its natural way. so that your spine is nicely aligned. And then gently press the tip of your tongue against the roof of your mouth, just behind your teeth. And your mouth is slightly open. You're going to keep your eyes semi-open, looking out and slightly downward toward the tip of your nose. You're not getting cross-eyed looking at the tip of your nose, but you're just letting your eyes kind of follow that line down and just keep them slightly open. Allow yourself to relax completely and breathe normally. At first, because we're concentrating on your breath, at first you might feel like you've never breathed before in your life, and you might start breathing like, not sure how to breathe anymore. You might find yourself breathing very shallowly. Just try and just breathe normally. We're going to put a very light attention on your breathing. Don't try to control your breathing at all. Just put the most gossamer thin attention on your breath. It's like taking your pulse. You don't put any pressure on it. You just observe it. Your attention is like a feather, gently riding on the surface of your breath. Now, your ego doesn't want you to meditate, and it's going to try to distract you. So you're going to remember that you left the iron on. You're going to think of the most brilliant idea you've ever had in your life, a cure for cancer. The way to handle this is to just disengage. Just dismiss the thoughts. Any thoughts that come, just let them pass and return to your breath. You don't try to suppress your thoughts. Don't try to tell yourself to stop thinking. Don't try to replace your thoughts with positive thoughts. Just let your thoughts be. Whatever arises is okay. Your meditation is not lost by hearing your thoughts, but by following them down the road. So when you find yourself following a thought, just drop it. You don't have to examine it and see if it's a good thought or a bad thought. It doesn't matter. Any thought that arises, just let it go and return to your breath. Your attention is like a feather, gently riding on the surface of your breath. If it's really difficult for you to dismiss your thoughts, you can imagine tongs picking up the thought and dropping it. Or you can visualize cutting them with scissors and throwing them away. But you always return to your single-pointed concentration. We return again and again to our breath. And I'm realizing now that I forgot my phone with my timer on it. So I'm wondering if my husband can hear me in the other room, and if he can possibly bring me my phone with my timer. Again, this is our first time broadcasting from our apartment, and we're still getting our act together. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to pull up a timer. We're going to meditate for 5 minutes. So when thoughts come up, just let them go like bubbles popping on the surface of a pond. Let them pop. Don't even look to see what they are. Just keep the most gossamer thin attention on your breath. All right, so we're going to meditate for 5 minutes. So today I wanted to talk about isolation. Currently, with this pandemic going on, the coronavirus pandemic, we are all more isolated than we are used to being. We are, in this time, we're not able to go about our daily lives, not able to go to work like we normally do, or hang out with our friends, or go out to restaurants or bars, or any of the activities that we like to do, even watching sports. If you're a sports person, you can't even watch live games from the comfort of your home. You can't go to a game, you can't play sports with others. So all these ways that we interact with others that we're not able to do right now. And what's interesting to me is that right now we are all experiencing this experience of isolation. We're together in our experience of isolation. But each of our experiences of isolation is unique. Some people are living alone and they feel tremendously isolated. They feel really, just so alone right now because they're not able to have any in-person human interaction at all. They're not able to hug others. They're not able to, have any actual in-person interaction. And so that's like a whole other level of isolation compared to people who are practicing social isolation but live with other people in their home. If you live with others in your home, you are still not able to go see your friends and do things you would normally do, but you do have the ability to hug your family members and comfort them if they need comforting. And so there are these different experiences depending on what your living situation is for how alone and how isolated you feel. If you are living with family, you might still feel isolated even within your family unit. We often feel isolated simply because we have different emotional experiences than others, or different, we've got our own psychological experience going on. A lot of people have traveled home to live with their parents during this time of isolation. They've decided instead of staying alone in their apartment or wherever they are to move in with their parents. Or some people have chosen to move in with their significant other because it's going to be going on for a few months. So you kind of have to choose who's going to be on your remote desert island with you. So even in those situations, you might be of a different religion than your family of origin, and now you're living with them again, and you have this unique lifestyle, this unique things that you do in your day that the others that you're living with don't relate to. That might be giving you a sense of isolation. There's a number of reasons that we may feel isolated even when we live with others, just on an emotional level or psychological level, or because we're not able to get enough alone time. And sometimes when we don't feel connected to ourselves, we can feel alone because we're not able to truly connect to others when we're not feeling present in ourselves. Some people are not working right now. They're not able to go to work, and you might, if that's you might be feeling very bored, and you might have cleaned your apartment top to bottom, or started organizing a closet, or throwing yourself into projects, or you might feel depressed and uncertain of what to do with your time. But that's one experience that people are having right now, is the experience of being deprived of their work and their normal activities. Other people are having the experience of trying to work from home during a crisis situation and trying to focus while there's all of this panic. And it's so beautiful outside right now. The cherry blossoms are blooming, the calorie pears are blooming, everything's blooming right now, and it's beautiful, but there's like a natural disaster happening that we can't see. It's almost like there's an invisible tornado going through our communities, and we can't see it. We have to shelter in place, And it kind of boggles the mind because you look outside and it's a beautiful sunny day. It doesn't look like there's any danger, but there is danger, and we know it, and we feel anxious, and we can feel the anxiety of others. And it's difficult to focus on your work in this situation. It's difficult to be, this isn't a normal work from home situation. This is trying to work from home while in a crisis. And so, you know, so you may be having that experience. Personally, I'm having the working experience. I work for an essential business. I'm working from home. I do know a lot of people who are not working, and so then we don't feel a sense of connection because our experiences of isolation are different. My experience is having lots of Zoom meetings and actually having more face-to-face time with others than I'm actually used to. It's just through a computer. While as others are having next to no face-to-face contact with others, and they feel very isolated. And so we're both in this experience where we're stuck in our homes, but our personal experience is different, and we're alone in our personal experience of it. What's also amazing to me about this time is that nothing stops for a crisis like this. There is this pandemic happening, and everything else is still happening too. Births are still happening, deaths are still happening, car accidents are still happening, people are still getting shot and you know, knifed in the streets. If there's like gang violence, there's still you know, children are still having their birthdays. Everything is still happening. It's just happening in this way that's compounded by and complicated by the suffering of isolation. So people are still having to move. There are people that have just sold their houses and have to move in the middle of this pandemic. And that's an experience that maybe they don't know anyone else who is having that experience, and they feel alone in that. Some people are having other health issues that have nothing to do with coronavirus, and they may need to go to a doctor. Maybe you have to go to a chiropractor or something that you can't do through telehealth. You have to go to the doctor. And that's scary. There's a risk. Anytime you leave your house, there's a risk, and that's scary. And, you know, if you have to go get chemo treatments or have to go get some kind of medical care that you have to do in person, you know, you might feel isolated because everyone else is able to stay in their homes, or those that you know are able to stay in their homes, and you have to go out in this. Or you might feel alone in just the compounded fear of that situation, of being so vulnerable. Others are pregnant right now and getting ready to deliver their babies. They might not be able to have the systems of support around them in the delivery room that they would want to have, that they were expecting to have, because now the hospitals have to limit visitors. And so then these women will be more alone than they thought they would be when they're in this experience of giving birth. And that's happening in the midst of all this other isolation that's happening. There's still people dying for all sorts of normal reasons that have nothing to do with the coronavirus. If you have a death in your family and you're stuck in your house and you can't commune with the people that you love, you can't hug and comfort your other family members, that is a tremendous sense of isolation. I mean, it's heartbreaking to think of the people who are stuck in their homes experiencing all of these normal sufferings that are just awful anyways, and then now you can't connect with the people who would bring you comfort, or you can't comfort those who you know need comfort. You can't hug them, you can't kiss them, you can't wrap your arms around them. You know, maybe the most you can do is mail them a gift or drop something off on their porch. And that's tough. You know, that's really tough. It's a very isolating feeling, tremendously isolating feeling, to be going through that kind of suffering and to be unable to connect with others. One of the most heartbreaking examples of isolation that I read about recently was of people whose first language is not English, who are getting coronavirus and being admitted to the hospitals. And There are translators available in hospitals, but depending on the language that you speak, it may take some time for the staff to find a translator. So, for instance, if you speak Spanish, Spanish is your main language, it's likely you'll find a translator pretty quickly. But if your primary language is less common, like Tagalog or I don't know, like any Vietnamese or another language that is not common in your area, then it may take a long time to find a translator. And so then these people are admitting to a hospital, having difficulty breathing, and they're already scared because they're feeling sick, they can't breathe, and then they're put in a room in isolation, alone. And then eventually someone comes in the full hazmat gear and comes in and says things they can't understand. And maybe they have, if they're able to get a translator, the translator would be talking through a cell phone that is probably in a pocket inside of the hazmat gear. And so then it's difficult to hear when there's so many layers of interference between the cell phone and the person speaking. So here's this person in hazmat gear trying to stand 6 feet away from you with a cell phone in their pocket with a translator who speaks your language. And this translator is the person who's going to communicate to you what's going on to you and what's going on for you and what you can expect. And you're having trouble hearing them and they're having trouble hearing you. And then what they tell you is that you have this sickness that is killing so many people around the country and around the world. And you're going to be stuck alone in this room and we don't know if there's anything we can do to help you or not. And then you're left in a room in isolation, alone, with no way to call your family, with no way to connect with others. And I just think that must be so tremendously isolating to not even speak the language of the people who are caring for you in that situation. It is just, I can't imagine the fear that one would have in that situation of being, unable to breathe well and not able to even communicate with people who are caring for you to know if you're going to live or die or what's going to be done or what to expect, and no way to reach those who do speak your language. Like, that is just so tremendously isolating. So there are all of these different experiences that we are having in this time of isolation, on all these different versions of isolation, whether it's physical isolation or just kind of emotionally feeling isolated or verbally feeling isolated through a language barrier, all these different ways. These experiences are not random. They're the result of our past actions. So some people may think that if you do something positive or negative, the result should be evident immediately, like when you pull the trigger of a gun, the bullet hits the target immediately. But that's not the case with karma. His Holiness Penor Rinpoche says, in most cases, karma ripens over time, whether that happens to be in this life, the next life, or any of those that follow. Even though we don't remember our past lives, we still must suffer the consequences of the choices that we made in them. The results follow us like our own shadow. Although we don't remember it, at some point in our countless lives, we created the causes for our current experience of isolation. This is not the first time that we have experienced isolation, and it won't be the last. Every one of us was born alone and will die alone. I've heard women say, only men would think one is born alone, which is probably true. However, the mother's experience of birth and the child's experience of birth are quite different. And they are alone in their experience during that time, even though they're both there and they're physically connected. In a way, they are alone in their experience. When the baby is pushed from its comfortable womb and squeezing through the birth canal, there's no way that the mother can comfort her child in that moment. Or at death, even if all of our loved ones are gathered around us, comforting us, at the moment of our death, you must leave them all behind. When you leave your body, none of them can accompany you. So we will surely experience this feeling of isolation again. We actually experience isolation all throughout our daily lives, but we often don't notice it We don't realize it. We're constantly searching for connection with others. Even if you think of, you see something beautiful, like you see a flower, and you want to share it with someone. You say, look at this beautiful flower. Even if they sit in the exact same place that you sit, and you have them look at the exact same petal that you're looking at from the exact same angle and the exact same light, you are going to have two individual experiences of that flower. You will not actually share the experience of that flower, because you both have your own unique karma, and you have your own history, you have your own karmic history, you have your own patterns, you have your own psychological associations. Maybe this red rose, maybe the red reminds you of your color's nails, and then maybe the red color reminds you of your mother's nails, and then the person you show it to, maybe the red reminds them of blood. And so you have two different associations going on with this color red. And so the flower has two different impressions on you. You have two different psychological reactions. There's so much specificity to our experience. There really isn't a way that we can 100% share anything that we see, anything that we experience. But we always want to. Thinley Norbu Rinpoche says, there can be isolation without intention or with intention. Some beings are isolated without intention because they had violent intentions in their past lives, and as a karmic result, they are born with a harmful appearance and violent energy, which causes others to abandon them. There's no benefit to this type of isolation, so it's meaningless and sad. Thinley Norbu Rinpoche says, some ordinary beings are isolated without intention because their elements no longer link with the elements of others. They may be hurt like a wounded animal and need isolation in order to protect themselves. Or they may be old and unable to connect with the elements of others because their energy has become diminished, and being tired, they need isolation in order to rest. Beings with wisdom intelligence often become isolated because ordinary people perceive their wisdom as eccentricity or even insanity. And some ordinary beings are also eccentric and experience isolation because of it. Thinley Norbu Rinpoche says, often we do not like to show our eccentricity because we do not like to be isolated. This does not mean that we want to be with people because we have compassion for them. It means that because we are afraid, we are always depending on others, because we do not have the confidence to be independent and are afraid of separation. Isolation can be psychologically difficult. And there's a good reason for it. Throughout human history, we have depended on each other to survive, so our minds have a strong reaction when we feel separated from others. In our evolution, being separated from others often meant certain death. And so it's normal to feel fear when isolated. When our minds are disturbed by strong emotions like fear, we generate all sorts of wild thoughts. And the Buddha has taught that our thoughts become words and actions, and these create karmic results. So the mind is the root of our karma. And since we don't understand karma and our own role in creating it, we often feel tossed about by the waves of our lives, by the churning sea of seemingly external conditions, and we feel helpless. We feel terrifyingly helpless. So some people give in to that feeling and freak out, emotionally reactive, effectively taking their hands off of the wheel of their speeding car. And some avoid facing this feeling by pretending that everything is okay. They just go into total denial mode. And I often see this avoidance cloaked in a display of faith that lacks personal responsibility. It's like saying, well, my health's in the Lord's hands, or thinking that your guru will protect you so you can just go about your life like normal and not change your habits in the least. This shows lack of understanding in karma. Jetsunma says, the difference between our own religion, which is basically a non-theistic religion, and other religions, is that other religions see a blessing from outside. They wait for a redeemer who will make it okay no matter what their activity is. We Buddhists are not like that. We believe in and understand the relationship between cause and effect. You can't murder a handful of people and then confess and accept Jesus as your savior and be okay. We don't believe that. You can't accept a Buddha as your savior and be okay. You can't accept me as your savior and be okay. You have to walk the talk. You have to walk the path, and you have to practice. People delude themselves into thinking that they don't have to train their minds or pray or deepen in their spiritual practice, or on a worldly level, delude themselves into thinking they don't have to practice social distancing or don't have to wash their hands because the good Lord or their guru or the universe is looking out for them. As if signing up for the newsletter or attending a few classes magically extends a net of protection around your comfortable habits. Quite the opposite, in fact. Buddhism is a discipline, not a subscription. You can't sign up for a monthly package and have blessings delivered to your door. There is no external savior that is going to wash your hands for you. You have to do that yourself. There's no external savior that is going to train your mind or change your habits. You have to do that yourself. If you have created the causes for it, you'll be blessed with the knowledge of what to do. And if you've created the causes for it, you will also have the means with which to do it. But it's up to you to do it. Whether it's washing your hands or training your mind, it is up to you to do it. If you have running water and soap in your house, you are rich. You are richer than most of the world. If you have the luxury to isolate in the safety of your home, you are filthy rich. And if you have the wisdom to take advantage of both of these, that's wealth too. These blessings don't come from outside of us. They are the results of our past actions. So any negative experiences that we are having, any positive experiences that we are having, it is all a result of our past actions. If we are feeling isolated right now, that is because of our past actions. If we are able to feel a sense of connection during this period of isolation, that is also because of our past actions. If we have the wisdom to listen to medical advice of all of those advising us to wash our hands and stay home, then that's the result of our past actions, that we're smart enough, we're intelligent enough to be able to take this advice and put it into practice. If we are stupid and not taking this advice and acting recklessly, that's also the effect of our past actions that has caused us to experience stupidity and ignorance in this life. And then we are creating more causes that we'll be unhappy with in the future. Through that stupidity that we are exhibiting now, we can get ourselves and others sick. We can get overtaken by all of our emotions and act in ways that are just stupid and ignorant and create causes that we're not going to like the results of. The results will cause us suffering and will cause others suffering. So if we have the wisdom to not do that, that is the result of our past actions. We are guaranteed to experience the results of our past actions. The question is, what will we do with that experience? Will we create more negative karma with emotional reactivity, unkind words, and stupid actions? Or will we work with circumstances as they arise, using them to discipline our minds, open our hearts, and deepen our practice, and realize our true nature? Which is it going to be? I once read this story of a girl who, she was raised in the Amazon rainforest, or she spent a good amount of her life there at least, and her parents taught her a lot of survival skills. about how to live in the rainforest, how to tend wounds, how to find food, how to find water, how to read the signs of nature, that kind of thing. So when her and her family got on a plane to fly back to wherever they were from, and this is a true story, by the way, and this plane blew up in the air, and everyone on the plane died except for this girl. This girl, miraculously, she was strapped into the middle seat of a row of seats on this plane, and the whole row of seats somehow was caught in like an updraft. Like there was this big storm, and that's what caused the plane to come apart. And big thunderstorms often have this upswell of air that is supporting them, that's causing those clouds to build up in the sky. There's this upswell of air, and her row of seats happened to fall directly in that strong upswell of air, and so she fell at a slower rate than other people who were falling out of that plane. She fell at a slower rate, and the row of chairs kind of acted like a parachute, slowing her descent. And then she fell, I think she fell into a tree or something like that, but it was, and she happened to keep her seatbelt on the entire time. Some people's seatbelts failed, some people flew out of their seats, all these different things happened. But she was the only person that survived that plane crash. So through the results of her past actions, she did not have the causes to die young. And so she survived that plane crash. She did not have the karma to die in that plane crash, and she survived that. She managed to wake up on the ground with a big gash in her leg, but otherwise generally okay. Everyone else had died. Now, if anyone else in that plane, maybe except for her parents, but most other people that were on that plane, if they had survived the fall, they would not have survived the week-long trek through the rainforest to get to civilization. But she did, because she knew what to do. Her parents had taught her how to survive in the rainforest. They taught her how to find food. They taught her how to tend her wound. So she knew how to find what she needed to cleanse the gash in her leg and to patch it up. And she knew how to find food, how to find water, and she did it. That's the kicker. She actually did it. If she knew what to do, but she didn't do it, she wouldn't have survived. She didn't sit helplessly on her tuchus like Little Miss Muffet. She applied the knowledge that she had, and because she did that, she was able to save herself. She didn't sit there under that tree just waiting for someone to save her. She took the knowledge that she had and she applied it, and she got out of the woods. Similarly, we have knowledge that can get us through the scary times we find ourselves in today. But we have to apply it. We can apply the wisdom of the Buddha, which will lessen the suffering that we are currently experiencing, and create the causes to save not only ourselves, but all beings from the endless cycle of suffering called samsara. One of the things that we can do from the comfort of our homes is make aspirational prayers. This is a wonderful practice because, for one thing, you don't need any particular training to do it. You don't need instruction, and you don't need to memorize anything. To make aspirational prayers, you can simply speak what is in your heart. For instance, if you're hungry before you eat, you might say, "May all sentient beings be nourished. May all beings have plenty of healthy food to eat and the nourishment of the Dharma." When you fill your glass with water, you can say, "May all sentient beings have plenty of clean, fresh water to drink." If you lose your job and you're poor and you just can't pull it together, you make stronger and stronger prayers. May no one go without good work and good occupation. May no one suffer as I am suffering now. If you wake up sick, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm sick," you might say, "May all sentient beings experience radiant health. May they not suffer the way I am suffering now. If you break a leg, before you start cussing or crying, you can say, may no sentient being suffer this pain ever. May all sentient beings walk strong and have full use of all their limbs. If we use our suffering in this way, it becomes meaningful. We suffer pointlessly all the time, and usually we react to suffering in ways that will only create more suffering for ourselves and others in the future. But by using our own suffering to generate compassion for others, to make aspirational prayers, then that suffering is useful. So we can use our experience of isolation right now. May no being ever feel alone. May all beings feel loved for and cared for. May all beings be relieved of their fear. If we feel depressed because we're alone, we can wish that all sentient beings feel immeasurable happiness. By my experience of depression and despair, may all beings be free of that suffering. By my experience of isolation and separation from others, may all beings be free from that suffering. This might seem kind of namby-pamby at first, but it begins to break our habit of thinking only of ourselves. By making aspirational prayers, we start to give rise to new habits of generosity and mindfulness, thoughtfulness, and caring. At first, you might be saying these prayers through gritted teeth without any real heart. Like, may all beings be free of suffering. I really mean it. Really. And if that's the case, it shows you that it's not your habit to care about others. That's the proof in the pudding. That's why we're suffering. We have, since time out of mind, only thought about ourselves. And we've acted selfishly, just for our own benefit. And we've created negative, we've done negative actions over and over and over again because we think it will make us happy, selfishly. And this is why we suffer. With persistence, if you continue to try making aspirational prayers, you will move past the gritted teeth phase. And your mind will change, your life will change, and you will become happier. When you get to the point where you wake up in a bad mood and you say, boy, I'm in a bad mood. I hope no one else feels this way. Then you're getting somewhere. If you get a headache and before you reach for the Advil, you think, I hope nobody else feels like this. May all beings be free of their pain and suffering. And that's really good. Your first thought is the consideration of others. If you feel thirsty, if you go out on a walk and you come back just parched, and you think your first thought as you grab your glass to fill it, you think, may no being experience thirst the way I am experiencing thirst now. May all beings have water whenever they need it. That is positive. If that is your first thought, that's really wonderful. Then you're getting somewhere. Jetsunma says that's really one of the main beginning points in the Buddha Dharma, to give rise to compassion. Stuck in your home, you might feel like there's not much you can do to help others. Well, we might be able to make masks. If you know how to sew, you can make masks. Some people are finding ways to volunteer in their community by making calls to check in on people who are living alone or in vulnerable situations. Some people are, supporting their local food banks or somehow connecting with modalities of service in their community. And that's really wonderful. And I hope if you have that ability, I hope you will take advantage of that and somehow plug in to something that will allow you to help others. In addition to continuing to, that not only strengthens your compassion, it's a positive action to engage in, it is helping others and helping combat the spread of this disease. It also will help your own depression and sense of isolation if you're able to do something to care for others. A lot of times our feelings of isolation are really compounded by the fact that our thoughts are isolated solely on ourselves. And that's really where that sense of isolation comes from. If we're only thinking of ourselves, how can we be with others? How can we feel connected to others? So we have to move past that, and we have to find ways to embrace others with our compassion, even if we can't physically be close to them. So you might feel like there's not much you can do to help others. Maybe you don't know how to sew. You don't have any way to plug into some volunteer service. And so you feel like there's just nothing you can do. So you don't try to do anything at all. Don't let the verdant field of your compassionate heart go fallow like that. Don't underestimate the nourishment that you can provide to the world. In this time of isolation, no matter what your experience is, if you are at home alone and you have lots of time on your hands, you can meditate and you can work to train your mind. And meditating helps to balance our emotions and calm the turbulence of our minds. And as the Buddha taught, our minds, our minds are the root of karma. Our thoughts become words and actions that create karma. And so if we can calm our minds, if we can calm the turbulence of our thoughts and emotions, then that has an effect on the karma that we're creating, because we're able to create space in our minds. Meditation creates space in our minds, and so that we are able to actually consider what actions would be most helpful and appropriate in a given situation, instead of reacting stupidly to stimuli like an animal, like just automatically reacting to it. If we have space in our minds, we can actually choose our actions instead of just being like a ping pong ball, helplessly bouncing back and forth between hope and fear and anger and sadness and greed, and just ping ponging around and acting off of those ping pongs. We can just, if we meditate, we can calm our minds, and then we can give rise to compassion. We can give rise to compassionate action, and we will create causes that will have results that we're happy with. We can create causes that will lead to happiness in the future for ourselves and for others. We can also use this time for aspirational prayers. Whether you live alone, you live with others, whether you can stay at home or you have to go to work, you're an essential employee, no matter what, you can make aspirational prayers through every action that you take. As I open this door, may all beings walk through the door to liberation. As if you're a grocery store cashier and you're terrified for your health while you're sitting there ringing up people's groceries, as I help all of these people receive the nourishment that they need, may all beings have the nourishment that they need. As I take this risk, as I take this health risk for others, may all beings be free of any risk to their health. As I put myself in this vulnerable position for the benefit of others to ring up their groceries so they can get food, as I put myself in this vulnerable position, may all who are vulnerable to this disease be protected from it. By my taking this risk, may I relieve all others of their risk of this disease. You can take any action that you are doing and you can spin it into a compassionate action. If you're living with your family in this time, you have a lot of opportunities to practice compassion too. And people are really living on top of each other. We have a lot of opportunities for anger to arise, or for our unhelpful childhood patterns, whatever our prevailing family dynamic is, that just comes roaring back. Whatever the dynamic was when we were children, that usually comes back when we're back with our families of origin. And so we can use this opportunity to spend time with our families and love them and take care of them. And if you know how to meditate, if you know how to calm your mind, if you know how to tame your emotions, maybe you can give them some help too. Maybe they're having a difficult time, and maybe there's a kind word you can say, or a helpful quote you've heard, or something that you can give them, some wisdom that you've heard somewhere that you can give them that would help them experience less fear in this situation. But we can use this opportunity, if we're living with others, we can use this opportunity to open our hearts to the ones that we're with. And if we're not living with others, we can still open our hearts. We can all open our hearts to all beings. So I hope you'll use this time of isolation as an opportunity to get to know your own mind, to practice meditation, and to deepen in your spiritual practice, and to open your hearts to others. All beings wish to be happy. In that you are not alone. All beings are experiencing suffering. In that you are not alone. All beings have the seed of Buddhahood within them. In that you are not alone. The Buddhas are always with us, not just externally appearing as statues or visions, but they are inseparably with us, as our true nature. When we remember this, we are never alone. Now, I'd like to close with a poem, which unfortunately I've also left this outside of the room, and so I'm just going to, oh, no, I think my husband heard. Can you give me magic dance? Magic dance? Thank you. So I wanted to end with this poem. This is a poem by Thinley Norbu Rinpoche. It's a little bit long, but it's so appropriate for this time. Isolated and fragile like the earthworm, when we are born from the womb, we cannot move freely, we cannot breathe freely. Isolated and ruined like a caved-in house, when we take our death sigh, we cannot move freely, we cannot breathe freely. Between isolated birth and isolated death, we try to join with others, but always we are in great isolation, meaninglessly. When we are infants, we are isolated because we cannot speak with others. When we start to speak, our parents teach us to say hello, which automatically means they are teaching us to say goodbye. When we are taught to say goodbye, this automatically means departure to an essenceless destination, which means isolation. When we meet someone, we say, "How are you?" which automatically means that one day we will be pale-cheeked patients with tears dropping from pitiful faces, isolated in bed. It is so sad because still we do not recognize that everything naturally goes toward isolation. When we love, we say, "I love you," which automatically means we are afraid, we don't love. We are isolated when we say, "I love you." We say, "I love you," to escape from our isolation. When we are old people with puffy eyes and haggard mouths, we are isolated from neglecting young people. From beginningless time until now, all ignorant sentient beings trying to find company, but we are always isolated meaninglessly because we disobeyed our self-awareness noble mother's advice. Even though we are isolated, there is no meaning to our isolation. Just like a wounded deer is isolated from his herd temporarily for protection from violent hunters, and ultimately because he lacks confidence about where to go. From isolated feeling, we create more and more isolation. If we are afraid to be isolated, if we do not want to be isolated, we must go into isolation like sublime beings in ancient times. Buddha Shakyamuni left his elaborate kingdom and young companions to go into isolation under the Bodhi tree with rugged clothes. But his samadhi isolation is meaningful because to comfort sentient beings from his wisdom samadhi, he found omniscient Buddha company, always smiling from the 10 directions. Padmasambhava was banished by Odayana's palace and stayed in isolation in many graveyards. But his realization isolation is meaningful because to help sentient beings through his wisdom phenomena, he found wisdom Dakini company dancing in all universes. Milarepa was betrayed by his uncle and aunt, and through aversion for samsara, went into isolation in a cave for his whole life. But his Mahamudra isolation is meaningful, because to benefit sentient beings through his realization hymns, he found the face of Dharmakaya everywhere. Longchenpa left samsara's impure rejection phenomena to go into isolation with his one rugged sack in the snow-capped mountains to see nirvana's pure acceptance phenomena. But his Mahasandhi isolation is meaningful because to give inexhaustibly to sentient beings his priceless jewel teaching from his wisdom clear sky mind, he found all equanimity display of countless stars beyond pure and impure acceptance rejection phenomena. So I hope that we will all be able to take this time of isolation and make it meaningful by putting the teachings of the Buddha into practice. We can't do anything about the fact that we are isolated right now, and this is likely to go on for quite some time. But what we can do is we can choose whether it will be meaningless isolation or whether we will make it meaningful isolation. So let's meditate one more time. And at the end, we're going to say Jetsunma's dedication prayer, which if you opened up the link to the opening prayers, this is the last page of that. So in case we've already forgotten our compassionate motivation, let's again start by arousing a feeling of great love for all beings. We're going to relax in that state for a moment. Just remember that we're going to settle our minds and let go of our busyness to create the space for us to awaken to love and compassion. Okay, now sit in your meditation posture with a straight back and a straight neck. Hands in your lap with your elbows out. I'm just going to relax and breathe normally. And just put the most gossamer thin attention on your breath. Remember, it's like taking your pulse. You don't put any pressure on it, you just observe it. Your attention is like a feather, gently riding on the surface of your breath. And again, we're going to go for 5 minutes. Let's say the dedication. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms.